Okay, everyone, welcome to our next lesson in parabolas. This is going to be the third and final video, parabolas. And this topic right here, this part, is actually fairly easy and fairly straightforward. What they want us to do there, in this case, is to actually determine the equation of a parabola. So instead of them giving you the parabola and you finding the graph or finding information about it, this is going to be the opposite to that. It's actually fairly straightforward though. Notice now this begins on page 8 in your notes. They've actually got it written down here. They break the process down into 3 steps, and you can use those 3 steps if you like. Step number 1 would be to look carefully at your parabola or to look carefully at the information and determine what the form of that parabola is going to take. Now remember, you're going to have a squared part on the left-hand side of your equation, and that could contain the x or that could contain the y, depending on the direction that your parabola is opening in. Then you're going to have an equal sign, and then you're going to have either a positive or a negative constant, which we were calling 4p. That's what it actually is. P, remember, is the distance from your vertex to either your focus or the distance from the vertex to your directrix. And then you're going to have a non-squared part, a linear part. All right. And again, the x could go there, or the y could go there, depending on the direction that it actually opens in. Now, step number 2, if you look carefully at your direction, and again, there's no real workings to this for the most part. Look at your direction. That'll tell you where the x and the y go. Remember, if it opens up or down, the x would be squared. But if it opens left or right, then the y would be squared. And also the vertex, if you look at that carefully, or if you have to do a calculation to get it, that will tell you the numbers that come after the x and the y, if any. And the third step would be, well, just write down your equation once you've determined all of that information. So we're going to look at the first example there, and this is not hard. This is not difficult whatsoever. In this case, they actually give us the graph of a parabola. Okay? Now, if you look at it carefully, here's my directrix. It looks to me like my directrix is y equals, because it's horizontal, and it's hitting the y-axis at 1, so that's y equals 1. Here is my focus on the inside, all right? And yeah, that looks like it's the point 4, comma 5. Okay, that's all right. And remember now that the vertex of your parabola is always halfway between the focus and the directrix. So if you look carefully, you can actually see that it should be about right there. You see that? Right at the very bottom of this parabola. So my vertex, if I look at that carefully, the x-coordinate is 4. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right from the origin. Yep. And it's actually 3 blocks up. Now be careful, because remember the blue line they've drawn there, that's not your x-axis, that's actually the directrix. The line below that is your x-axis, and you can see that that point is 3 blocks above the x-axis. Well, you know what? You've actually got everything you need here right now to be able to write down the equation of that parabola. Remember, one part will be squared and one part will not. It's opening upward, so it's the x actually that's going to be in your squared part. So x is going to go like this on the left-hand side. And I can see that my vertex has an x-coordinate of positive 4, so this part is going to be x minus 4, and that's going to be squared. Well, that was pretty easy, wasn't it? And then there's going to be an equal sign. And the constant in front of the linear term, which in this case is the y, is going to be positive because the parabola is opening upwards. So it's basically just positive 4p. See that? And if you look at this graph carefully, I mean, getting p is really easy. What's that distance there? It's 2, isn't it? Just count the blocks. From the focus to the vertex is 2 blocks, or you can think of it as from the vertex to the directrix. That's also 2 blocks. But either way you do it, you're going to get 2 blocks. So 4p is 4 multiplied by 2, and that's just 8. And then the other part is going to contain the y. All right, that's the non-squared part. And finally, just look at the y-coordinate of your vertex, and it's positive 3. So this is going to become minus 3. Remember to change the signs, right? You change the signs of both coordinates here for the vertex. And ta-da, there you go. There's your equation. Nothing more to it than that. How much workings did we do? Nothing. We did no workings whatsoever. All right? And you're going to find that most of these problems, most of these types are like that. As long as you have your graph, or if you don't have a graph, if you're just given information and you need to come up with the equation of the parabola, make a rough sketch, right? Something like that. That's all you need to do. And we've made rough sketches of parabolas before. Just locate the vertex and make sure you get your direction okay, and then look for things like P and the vertex and stuff like that. Here's number 2. Let's try this one. Write the equation for the parabola. We're told that the focus is at 0, 4. So that's going to be actually on the positive part of your y-axis. The directrix is y equals -4. Now it's important to remember y equals a number is a horizontal line, not a vertical line. If you accidentally sketched a vertical directrix in this case, you'd end up with the completely wrong equation. So let's make a rough sketch. And when I say rough, I mean rough. Okay, focus is at 0, 4. So let me see, it's at 1, 2, 3, 4, about there. There's my focus. All right, focus 0, 4. My directrix is a horizontal line. It's y equals -4, so it's going to hit the y-axis at -4, and that's 4 units down from the origin. So there you go. Look, something like that right there, approximately. And remember, this is just a rough sketch. That's y equals -4. And remember now that your vertex has to be exactly halfway between those two things, right? Halfway between them. And we can clearly see there's 8 units or 8 blocks in between the directrix and the focus, so I guess half of that would be 4, wouldn't it? So 4 units from either of those, right in the center, there is your vertex. Look at that. And this is 0, 0. Your vertex is 0, 0, which kind of makes your equation a little simpler. And now, remembering that my focus must be on the interior of my parabola, that means that there's no other possibility except it opens upward. You see that? It has to. The directrix is on the other side of the vertex from the focus. And I think we're pretty much ready to write our equation, everybody. And I mean, again, we did practically no workings there at all. Because it opens upward, the x part is going to be squared, so I'll put my x over on the left-hand side of my equation. And let me see now, x minus what? Well, the x-coordinate of the vertex is just 0, isn't it? So it's x minus 0. You don't need to put in the x minus 0. It's not wrong if you do, but you don't need to put in the x minus 0 part. So this is just x squared is equal to. And because it's opening upward, again, it's going to be positive 4p for the constant. And again, I can very easily look at that, and I can see that in this case, my value of p is 4, right? 4 units between the focus and the vertex, or 4 units between the vertex and the directrix, either way you look at it. So 4 times 4, and that's going to be 16, positive 16 because it's opening upward. So 16 in front of, and now comes my y term. This is not squared, remember. Let me see, y minus what? Well, y minus 0. And again, I don't need to put in the 0. So there is my answer for number 2. Now, wasn't that simple? Wasn't that straightforward? Not bad at all. Let's try example number 3. This says write an equation for a parabola, and it has a focus at -2, 3, and a directrix of x equals -6 this time. So that's a vertical line. Now, notice that in numbers 2 and 3, they were kind of like the same problem, because in both cases they gave us the focus and the directrix, but they could give us other information as well. So for example, they could give you the vertex and the directrix, or they could even give you the focus and the vertex, but it's not really making it any more difficult if you just make a rough sketch of your situation and then come up with the equation of your parabola. So here we go. Let's make another rough sketch. Something like that. So the focus is at -2. Now remember, plot your points correctly. There's -2. +3 would be 3 blocks up. So about right there, there's my focus. All right, there's my focus at -2, +3. The directrix is x equals, so that's a vertical line, remember. Oh, I'll make this a little longer because I think I'm going to have to go to the left here now, you see. A vertical line that hits the x-axis at -6. So there's no 1, 2, there's -3, -4 is about there, -5, and there's -6. So ta-da, draw a vertical line right through there. And there's my directrix, x equals -6. And remember that your vertex is halfway between those 2 points. Now, if you set up your diagram like I've done here, you can see that the distance between the directrix and the focus is actually 4 units, all right? That's 4 right there. But your vertex is exactly halfway between those. So the vertex is going to be 2 blocks from the directrix and the focus right there. And if you can just read that off, what the x-coordinate is, you can see that the vertex right there is actually at the point, let me see, -4, and it's up 3. So there you go. There's your vertex at -4, 3. Another way you could do this to locate the x-coordinate of your vertex is if you look at the focus, which has an x-coordinate of -2, and if you look at the directrix, which is x equals -6, then the x-coordinate of your vertex is going to be exactly halfway between those two. Algebraically, if you wanted to, you could have just done this. The x-coordinate is equal to the average of those two numbers, right? How do you take the average of two numbers? Well, you add them together, so that's -2 plus -6, divide by 2, and that's going to give you -8 over 2, and that's -4. So that also kind of confirms that the x-coordinate of the vertex is -4. Now let me see, which direction? Let me kind of clear up some of this clutter that I've got there. All right, let me kind of clear it up a little bit. Now, because of the location of my directrix and my focus and my vertex as well, I can clearly see that this parabola excuse me, is going to open to the right this time. It has to. There's no other choice. It has to open to the right. And if it opens to the right, then that means the y term is going to be squared. So my equation this time is going to be y. Now, what's the y coordinate of my vertex? Right there, look. 3, +3. So this is going to be y minus 3 squared is equal to, this is how it's going to start. And now look carefully at what the value of P is. That's the distance from the vertex to the focus or the vertex to the directrix. And I can clearly see here that P is equal to 2, isn't it? So the 4P is actually going to be 4 times 2, which is going to be 8. And it's positive in this equation because the graph is opening to the right. That's a positive direction. So I just write my 8. And then I look carefully. The non-squared part is going to have my x with it. And the x-coordinate of the vertex, remember it's the vertex, not the focus. The x-coordinate of the vertex is -4. So in my equation, I write x plus 4. And by golly, look at that. We are done. There is your parabola. And again, very little with regards to actual workings. So that's the last example there on page 8. Now, beginning on page 9, they've got some practice problems there for you to try, and also on page 10 as well. So I'm going to leave these for you to try. They look pretty straightforward. Here's you can see your vertex and your focus. This black line up above, by the way, that's your directrix. Number 2, yeah, okay, looks pretty straightforward. They all look pretty straightforward, actually. Number 4 is a little different. Look, here they're giving you the vertex and the focus. Don't let that throw you off. And the same with number 5. And then on page 10, there's some more there. Now, number 6, they don't actually have the graph drawn, but they give you some information here. Use this graph to actually put your points in, your focus and your vertex. And they didn't even really have to do this for you. They could have just given you the information. Be aware of sometimes you might get decimals or fractions. Number 7, okay, that looks fairly straightforward. Hopefully you can all see that the vertex is right there at -2 and -4. The blue line is not your x-axis. This black line above is your x-axis. Be careful. -2, -4. Okay, so every one of those blocks is 1. And anyway, that's it for those practice problems. So try those. If you have any difficulty, let me know. Remember to keep looking up the solutions on D2L. Okay, so that's it for parabolas. Bye bye.